Oh boy, disclaimer.
People may think that becoming a horror fan is easy. All you gotta do is play a few spooky games, watch a few scary movies, and boom, you're a horror fan. Well, you're wrong. It's not that simple. Hell, it's hard to even know where to start sometimes. For starters, there are several subgenres, and there's also many different forms of horror media, and about a gazillion of each of those. Just look at all this! Well, thankfully birthdays are a thing, because for my birthday this year I got this, the 100 must-see horror movies scratch poster. Now, being honest, I've seen the majority of these, but it got me thinking, why not review every movie on this list one at a time? If these are indeed the must-see horror movies, it would be a great way for me to introduce potential fans to the genre, at least as far as movies are concerned, and then I'll scratch them off as I go. I thought about it over a cup of tea and I decided to give it a go. So grab some snacks, turn out the lights, hide under the comfiest blanket you can find, and join me as I take a look at the 100 must-see horror movies. Pet Sematary is one of the first horror movies I ever watched. It definitely wasn't the first, but it was within the first 10. I remember being terrified of it as a kid, but my sick fascination with horror kept me rewatching it. In fact, I watched it so much that the damn VHS tape snapped, ridding me of the movie for several years. I recently got it again on DVD, and considering it's on the poster for top 100 horror movies you must watch before you die, I figured it would be the next film to tackle in this series. For those who don't know, Pet Sematary, which was released in 1989, is a film adaptation of the Stephen King book of the same name. Originally, George A. Romero, the same man who bought us The Night of the Living Dead, purchased the rights to the film in hopes of making it, but sadly to pull out of the project due to being busy directing Monkey Shines. Executive Lindsay Doran enjoyed the script so much that when she became Vice President of Production at Paramount Pictures, she advocated for the film to be produced there. She kept being turned down, but thankfully they reconsidered after the studio faced potentially having less original film releases for 1989 due to the 1988 Writers Guild of America strike. Stephen King personally chose Mary Lambert to direct the film after meeting her. He was impressed by her passion for his novels and for being adamant that she would make the film closely follow the book. Pet Sematary was one of my favourite horror movies as a kid, but I'll admit I haven't seen it in years. Do my memories of this film still stand, or have they crumbled to the test of time? And does it deserve to be on the poster? Well, let's take a look and find out. The film starts with the Creed family moving from the busy city lifestyle of Chicago to the quiet, relaxed country life of Maine. The family consists of Rachel, the mother, Ellie, the daughter, Gage, the son, and Lewis, the father. Oh, and their cat Churchill, or Church for short. We are also introduced to their new neighbour, Judd, played by the late great Fred Gwynne. Next to their dream home is a pet cemetery, where townsfolk bury their beloved pets after they pass on, most of which have been claimed by trucks driving down the main road. Judd takes the family there and reassures Ellie that it's a good place because the animals there can rest in peace. Lewis, who is an ER doctor, took the job in Maine under the pretense of having an easier schedule. Yeah, that doesn't go well.
Start a cardiac monitor. Yes, sir. Need large bores. Alright, get an ambulance here and get it right now. You've got to go to EMC.
On his first day, a jogger named Victor Pascoe is rushed to the ER after being hit by a truck. He dies, but not before warning Lewis about the pet cemetery, even knowing Lewis by name.
Lewis. How did you know my name?
Dun dun dun! His ghost then appears that night and takes him to the cemetery, warning him not to cross the barrier to where the ground is sour. After Church gets killed by a truck, Judd takes Lewis to bury him on an ancient Indian burial ground which is located past the barrier in the pet cemetery. Because if you're going to have a burial ground, it has to be ancient Indian. The following day, Church returns to the house alive, but different, now much more vicious and creepy. But after their son Gage gets killed by a speeding truck, Lewis decides to take Gage to the burial ground, with disastrous consequences. That's the very basic summary of what happens, but I feel it doesn't do the film any justice. But before I go into any major details, if you have yet to see this movie and don't want it to be spoiled for you, skip to this time code to get the good, the bad, and the overall. Go on, I'll wait. So it goes without saying that Gage comes back evil, much like Church. Now I've got to give credit to Miko Hughes who plays Gage. He was just 3 years old at the time, yet was capable of putting on a stellar performance. Gage looks horrifying at points, just look at those eyes. So yeah, Gage comes back to life, more evil than ever, and returns home to steal one of Lewis's scalpel blades. He then decides to do some mindfuckery with Judd before slicing him up with the scalpel. Ouch. And if that wasn't enough, he then kills Judd by ripping his throat out with his teeth. Bloody hell. This scene is really well done. Not only is it shot perfectly, but the pacing is perfect, as are Gage's evil chuckles. Laughs like that send chills down my spine. Ellie, meanwhile, who throughout the film has been shown to have realistic dreams about what her father's been doing, tells Rachel she dreamed of Victor Pascal, who told her Lewis was going to do something bad. Hearing this, Rachel decides to return back to Maine. Victor then becomes my favourite character of the movie because he helps Rachel make her way back to Maine, from helping her make her flight in time to finding her a rental car.
I'm sorry, it's been very busy. I really don't have anything.
What about the Aries K? The one with the scratch on its side?
I do have an Aries K. But it came in rather beat up, and there's a long scrape up one side. I'll take it.
Rachel makes it back to Maine, not without life screwing over a few times however, and rushes to Judd's house. Here she sees the ghost of her sister Zelda, who died from spinal meningitis when Rachel was a young girl. Being honest, I never really got the point of Zelda. She adds nothing to the main plot of the film. I guess you could say her story gives Rachel's character more depth. After all, she says in flashbacks that she was the one who watched her die and was glad when she did die, but I feel it was a forced excuse for creepy visuals. To be fair though, the visuals used here are stunning and Zelda is mortifying. This was the main bit that terrified me as a kid. Zelda was actually played by Andrew this guy, after Doran decided that a man playing the role of a sick teenage girl would be scarier. She wasn't exactly wrong, was she? Lewis wakes up to find child-sized muddy footprints and an open medical bag. Immediately knowing something is wrong, he grabs some needles full of enough morphine to kill a toddler and runs over to Judd's, killing Church with one of the needles. He finds Judd's corpse before Gage hangs Rachel in front of him. Seeing a maniacal toddler giggling with delight at that really gives me the creeps. Lewis and Gage fight, with Gage getting in several stabs, but Lewis fends him off and injects him with the morphine. It's an intense scene, completely ruined by this line.
No fair.
I mean, why? It just sucks any tension and drama out of the scene. Lewis burns down Judd's house before going to bury Rachel in the burial ground despite protests from Victor.
I'm sorry, Lewis. I'm so sorry. But don't make it worse. Don't!
I waited too long with Gage. With Rachel. It will work this time. Because she just died.
What an idiot. Being honest, I don't actually mind his stupidity here because it does show how much he loves his wife and how desperate he is to bring her back. Also, he has clearly had a mental break after all that has happened during the film. So he returns home, plays solitaire and waits for Rachel to return. In arguably the most disturbing scene of the movie, he makes out with Rachel's corpse, further solidifying just how crazy he has become. Then Rachel grabs a sharp kitchen knife and the film fades to black. Originally the film was supposed to end with Rachel entering the kitchen and Lewis smiling at her, but this ending was done instead because the studio decided it wasn't graphic enough. I think the original ending would have been better because it would have left more room for our imagination. Sometimes less is more. So that was Pet Sematary, an interesting film for sure, but what's the verdict? Well, let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the overall. The characters are, for the most part, really likeable. Lewis is shown to be a devoted husband and father, such as when he comforts Ellie after she expresses sadness over the prospect of losing Church. He also shows his support for Rachel after she discusses the death of her sister. Judd is an awesome character too, coming across as a wonderful, sweet elderly man who is happy to finally have some neighbours again. He clearly has the best intentions at heart, even if he sometimes goes about it the wrong way. Victor Pascal is also a great part of the film, being both eerie and chilling, but also fun and enjoyable. The acting throughout is superb, with special shouts going to Dale Midkiff as Lewis, Denise Crosby as Rachel, Fred Gwynne as Judd, and especially Miko Hughes as Gage. All the actors became their characters and drew me in with their performances. And I can't honestly emphasise enough that Miko was just 3 years old at the time, and he put on one of the best performances of the lot. The plot, while slightly intricate, is solid and easy to follow. Pet Sematary is one of King's more original works, and they did a great job bringing it from paper to film. The visuals are stunning, especially the titular pet cemetery, particularly at night. The burial ground looks great too, as does the main countryside. The horror visuals are also grade A, with special mention going to whenever Rachel's sister is on screen. Hell, they even managed to make Church look evil. This cute cat, evil! And the gore effects are elite, with Victor Pascal's injuries looking great both before and after death. The music is engaging and eerie too, as are the sound effects such as Church's hissing and Gage's giggling. The plot, while solid, does have a lot of filler. As scary as Rachel's sister is, her story adds literally nothing to the main plot. If you removed all scenes to do with her from the film, the plot wouldn't be affected. A character called Missy Dandridge, who helps the Creeds in their new home, commits suicide for literally no reason. What's the point of this scene? And why do we have to see her funeral? Unless it was a cheap excuse to shoehorn a Stephen King cameo into the film, I'm stumped. The ending, whilst tragic, is a bit weak. I can't really go into details, but let's just say I would have rather had the original planned ending over the one we got. Pet Sematary still holds a special place in my heart all these years later. The characters and plot are memorable and the horror is still pretty chilling to watch today. I'll admit I don't find it anywhere near as scary as it is as a kid, but I do find it unnerving. And I'd rather feel unnerved by something than be made to jump by cheap jump scares any day. The visuals are great and the effects are bang on brilliant. Despite a bit of filler and a slightly weak ending, this is a fine horror movie to add to your collection. And it's definitely one of the better Stephen King film adaptations, easily solidifying its place on the poster. Would I recommend it to new horror fans? Yes, I would. It's a great way of showing just how effective practical effects could be back then, and it's a fantastic insight to King's work. If you are a new fan to the horror genre, I recommend checking this one out. It still holds up to this day. And that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. Have you seen Pet Sematary? What are your thoughts on it? Let me know down below. I've been Banterson, and I'll see you soon.